Just want to check whether our YouTube stream is working. We've had a couple of people just comment in to check on that. But Mike, I think probably one of the first questions that's worth asking and thinking through is as far as how many people will be allowed to be at church as we look to gathering together again. And so, yeah, the question is how many people will be allowed to be at a service at church at Minchinbury?
Yeah, great question. There are still restrictions placed on public gatherings all over the place, and including churches. There's no specific number that's, gatherings are up to 100 or anything like that. The actual restriction is based on the size of the property and the size of the building. So there's a 4 metre squared rule, which we're all getting very familiar with. And so based on the size of our property, we've determined that when we open, we can have 50 adults during a church service and probably up to 15 kids. So 65 would be the max that we could have at any public gathering.
And that's divided across the church rooms, is that right? So
Yeah,
as you come into the building in any space, that you'll see a poster on the wall that tells you how many people can be in any given space according to that rule.
Yeah, that's right. When we do come in, you'll see there is lots of posters hanging up around the church, not just how many people can be in a certain room, but how to wash your hands and how to be 1.5 meters apart, all of those different things. So we'll do our best to ensure that we meet those requirements.
So that number of people that can be at a service, as you say, is a little bit flexible depending on the size of our space. But I guess then a follow-up to that is to do with how will I actually determine who is going to be in the building on a Sunday. So the question that someone has asked here is, if I can just find it. Sorry, there's a few questions coming in now, so I just need to scroll through. If the number of people who are allowed at church is limited,
yes,
how do I know if there will be space for me? What if too many people show up,
yes,
for example?
Great question, and thank you for whoever asked that question. We've started to trial this weekend, and even at the wedding of Sarah and Christian yesterday, because we need to kind of manage the numbers of people that attend a service. We're going to be asking people when we do open up public services to pre-register their attendance. So we're going to be trialling, and we have started trialling, a registration form known as Try Booking. You've probably seen it around before. And we'll set our parameters and the limits of adults and children. And so we're going to be asking people to pre-register their Sunday service attendance at 6 p.m. or at 10 a.m. When we open those services. And to do that before close of business Friday, so that the staff team can look at who's planning on attending and rearrange seating to make sure that it's COVID safe on the weekend before the Sunday service. So there may be scope for people to turn up to church without pre-registering on a Sunday morning or a Sunday evening, but you do run the risk if you do that the service is already fully booked. And sadly, we're going to have to turn those people away. We hate to turn people away from church, right? Church is obviously a place that's open generally to anybody and everybody that wants to hear the word of God and to be impacted by it. But we do have these set rules that we need to abide by. So we're going to be encouraging everybody to pre-register their Sunday service attendance in the week leading up to a given Sunday. And so you can kind of guarantee you or your family a seat at that time. It's going to take some time to get used to it, and we want to make sure that it's a balanced attendance as well. There's not the same people always coming to church that might then stop other people from wanting to come to church. Yeah. So we're going to try and manage that the best that we can, but that's the way that we're going to do it.
Okay. And obviously that system, that try booking, is still being developed and worked out. And it's probably worth noting as well that system, some of the language it uses, it talks about booking or purchasing tickets and that sort of thing. It's probably worth noting that we're not charging people to come to church at all. We're just reserving a seat basically in the room. Is that sort of?
Yes, correct. So just because the way that the Try Booking website works, it's generally an event planning ticketing system that you would purchase a ticket for. So that language is still there, but it is free to come to church. And when we do scan your ticket in at the door, we're not, subversively scanning your credit card or anything like that. Although that could be an interesting thing to increase our
Yeah.
church. No, we're not going to do that. That's
Yeah.
just what we'll need to do.
Great. Okay, cool. Um, there's another question that someone's asked that probably applies to thinking through the sorts of things that happen before the service. That's sort of the things we've been talking about at the moment, and it's to do with contact tracing.
Yes.
So the question is that obviously restaurants and other public places need to do contact tracing. So that's when someone comes into a space, their details are recorded in case there happens to be some kind of infection that spreads around. We can then contact all the people who were in that space, just so we can follow that up. Does our church have to do that too? And if so, what will that look like? How will we be doing that?
Yes, great question. And that flows on from the previous question. So pre-registering your attendance for church will enable us to do that contact tracing requirement easily. So that you've pre-registered your attendance, you just bring your ticket with you to church on a Sunday, either a physical ticket or just on your mobile phone. We'll scan that and you're already checked in and you've met all the requirements for COVID-safe contact tracing. We will keep all of that data on our system. The government requires us to do that for 28 days, just in case there is an outbreak or a cluster that happens to be here. Please pray that that doesn't happen. I don't want Minchinbury Anglican Church to be on the news for that. I'd rather us be on the news for our proclamation of the gospel and lives being changed, but not for that reason. So, yeah, that's how we're going to do it. So the registration process will help us do that contact tracing. Yeah.
So in summary of the things that we've talked about now then, of what happens before a face-to-face church gathering, we do have a limit on the number of people that can be inside this building at any given time. The way that we'll manage that is through the Try Booking website, which we will reserve a certain number of seats per week in the building. And we will be tracing contacts using the information from that Try Booking.
Correct.
Should there, please pray that that doesn't happen, be an outbreak, we can then follow that up and deal with that appropriately.
And it's an inconvenience, I recognise it, but I think we've seen just this past week how important it is. Like we've just heard on the news, right, what's been happening at a hotel in Casula in southwest Sydney, where they may or may not have done this in the best way, and it just makes then trying to contain the spread of this virus much more difficult. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can. Yeah.
Great. All right, well, the next few questions that we have that some people have asked are to do with what church will actually look like when we start getting back together. And I'm sure lots of people have heard that there's all kinds of different restrictions and things that we can and can't do. So some of the questions are to do with those.
Yeah.
The first one that I know a lot of people have asked is to do with singing. And so the question is this: what will happen with music at the church services, since as far as we're aware, we're not allowed to sing in a public church gathering?
That's right. So I'll clarify what we can and can't do in a church gathering. There can be music and singing in church from the front, and so there can be a participating by listening to music and singing from the front. The restriction is that the congregation is not allowed to join the music team in their singing. I'm sure they could hum along and make music and melody in their heart to the Lord, but they're not allowed to physically sing. We're not allowed to do any high-energy dancing as well.
I was going to ask about that.
Not that we've been known for our high-energy dancing here, but we can't do that either. So what it's going to look like is very different to what people may have been used to in coming along to church, say, on a Sunday morning. So what we're thinking of doing at this stage is we're going to start opening up a public gathering on the 26th of July at our 6 p.m. service. And there'll be limited music and singing at this stage in that service. There might be an item that we can use to reflect on the message that has been taught during that service, but may not be a lot of live music and singing in that service. The 10 a.m. service is currently our live stream service, and we're planning on opening that up to church members to come and attend on the 2nd of August. Because that's our live stream service as well, there will be, 3 or 4, songs during that time together. That will be difficult because we'll have to encourage the congregation not to sing. And if you're excited about coming back to church, I'm really with you. I long for everybody to come back, but you need to know it's going to feel and look really strange. You know, not particularly welcoming at the front door. You know, we're going to ask you to bathe yourself in hand sanitizer. We're going to make you read all of these checklists and ask you all these personal questions. We're going to scan you in. That's not particularly welcoming. And then we're going to tell you where to sit and who you can and can't sit with. You can't handshake, you can't hug, you can't dance, and you can't sing. And we're not doing kids' church initially. So welcome back to a 10 a.m. family service.
Yeah.
So it's going to look and feel a little bit different. But that's what we've got to do.
Okay. And that will sort of lead in really nicely into the next couple of questions, but just one question that I'm not sure if you'll be able to clarify, but as far as, so part of the thing that people I think will be missing with singing is that aspect of communally singing together. Obviously there's great things about music apart from community in that we're speaking and hearing gospel truths. Does that apply across all communal elements of a service? For example, spoken creed or spoken prayer, or is that across the board?
Good question. The technical wording of the current New South Wales health order is there's no congregational singing, no chanting, which I think is a catch-all kind of category for lots of different religions and how they liturgically express themselves. So I think for us, common spoken out prayers, Lord's Prayer, Apostles' Creed, would fall into that category. So we won't be able to share in those in that way. We will do our best to lead those things from the front, say, to 10 a.m. live stream, but sadly people will just have to echo those words in their minds rather than out loud.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarity.
But I should clarify, if you're thinking of still coming together on a Sunday morning, say at 10 a.m. in little house churches, which has been great to see many people do over the last month or so, there's no restrictions in terms of singing and praying and things like that there. So I think for many people, staying at home and watching the live stream at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning with other people, with their families, is potentially going to be more encouraging and edifying than coming to the physical building. Yes, there is something great about gathering in this building. There's something about the live element that you can't capture on a computer screen. So I get that, but it'll be a balance.
Yeah. So we're still very lucky to have some elements of community that we can still enjoy. Just perhaps it will look different in our church building for a public gathering.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I think actually before we get on to the kids' church question that you mentioned before, just quickly, someone's asked a question about if we're limited in this building to the number of people, could we theoretically put a speaker outside, for example, so that more people could attend on the property without being inside the public gathering? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, I haven't thought much about that. We do have to respect our neighbours and whether they would like, Mike Smith's voice booming out over, South Rudy Hill on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. I'm sure those living in the greenhouse won't mind, but other neighbours may mind, so we'd have to be careful of that. But that is something that we could explore about that. If there is a gathering outside, it would still need to be a COVID-safe gathering, social distancing, and all of those kind of things. But I think at the moment there's still current restrictions on outdoor gatherings of 20 people. So
yes, that hasn't lifted. That's right.
So that may be a challenge to get through as well. And it is also the middle of winter. So there's not a lot of heating outside in the middle of winter. It's probably going to be more encouraging to stay at home or to pre-register and come and watch live.
Cool, thank you for that. Well, we've touched on it a couple of times. The next question is to do with kids ministry programs. So you said that there won't be any kids ministry programs right away. Someone's asked what services will be available for kids, for example, kids church or creche or preschool, etc. Is that something that we're looking at now, future, not at all? What's our sort of...
So slowly. So our long-term plan is to bring back in a regular weekly kids church program. But because this is all new and we want to be safe in the way that we reopen, we want to just be patient and take our time. Adults are a little bit easier to manage than different rooms and kids' church and, safe ministry ratios and all of those kind of things. So we're going to start a bit slow just to get used to pre-registering, what services like, how we can manage that. But the long-term plan is to bring back, I don't know, you're excited about that too,
Absolutely, yeah.
Maddie, as well. So maybe not in those first few weeks in August. So
Yep.
we've said no kids' church at least for the first couple of weeks when we open up the 10 a.m.
Yes.
service. But potentially towards the end of August, we might be able to open up a kids' church program for up to 15 children.
Yep.
For some families, that's half the quota, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so the programs will need to be able to be managed in terms of, teaching from preschool all the way through to primary and even D teams potentially as well. But it's not a not ever, it's a not yet.
Yes.
Slowly bringing things back in, learning from mistakes that we might make so that we can make sure that we can do things well and safe. So not those initial first few Sundays in August, but maybe towards the end of August, September, there'll be a kids' church on a Sunday. But again, up to the limit of 15.
That's right.
15 kids. But as Term 3 starts, Kids Club and Youth Group, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so hopefully some of you will have seen that our kids club and youth programs are hoping to at this stage and planning to, and our teams actually met over the last week to talk about this return on an alternating weekly basis, which is very exciting. So that means that for our youth and kids club crew, every couple of weeks there should be some face-to-face time, and our leaders have been working on that. So that's great.
Yeah, that's excellent.
It's also probably worth noting as well that from a kid's perspective, we're not, as you said, Mike, we're not delaying for the sake of delaying. Our concern is to care for the children in our programs, and we're actually really desperate and really desire to go back to face-to-face, and we can't wait for that day. So please do pray that that day would come soon, and we can do that in a way that is safe and caring. But we look forward to that day.
And in the meantime, keep enjoying. Maddie's putting out some quality resources online, as well as our kids and youth leaders. They're putting
not
out
just me.
high-quality material online. Families, I hope that you've been doing that. And if you haven't, take this as just a gentle encouragement to use those resources. It takes a significant amount of time to put those together. Now, that's not a reason in and of itself to use them, but just so that you know that is happening. And they are a great blessing. So enjoy doing those activities online with your family.
Thanks, Mike. The next question is to do with, again, what sorts of things will be happening while we're in a service. So this one's to do with communion.
Okay.
Will we be able to hold communion in person in future months as we progress?
That's right. We normally do communion once a month. It's usually the last Sunday of the month or around that time. So the 26th of July will be the last Sunday of this month, and that Sunday will be the first Sunday that we start to open up, but it'll only be the 6 p.m. service that'll open up. So we will do Lord's Supper the way that we've done it the last few months at the 10 a.m. live stream. It'll be Lord's Supper at home, set aside some bread and juice, and we'll share together virtually the Lord's Supper on the 26th of July. The end of August, I'll have to think about how we can do that safely. There are some restrictions from the government about handling not just food, but religious relics and things like that. I think from the government's perspective, they see the Lord's Supper as a religious relic. I know we don't, but we do need to be mindful of how we handle the bread and juice and share that together as a live group of people. It's not banned in any way, so there is potential for us to do that at the end of August, and we will work that out as a staff team and let people know as we get to that point.
Great. Sounds good. But for now, we're still able to enjoy the Lord's Supper in smaller groups in homes, as long as it's prepared COVID safe by the host, etc.
Yep. That's right. As long as it's COVID safe, good quality bread, good quality grape juice. Enjoy it together.
Great. Okay, well, for now, that's all the questions that have come in about the actual service. But please, if you have more, keep sending them in. We'll still be here for a few minutes talking about that. So if you have more questions, keep sending them in. But the next questions relate to after the service, and it sort of actually ties in with what you were just talking about as far as food. It's to do with post-service morning tea or just spending time together after the service. And I know for a lot of us, that's a time that we really look forward to and love, spending time together and sharing food together. what is that going to look like? Is that going to be possible after the service? How are we going to manage that sort of post-service stuff?
Look, anything is possible, right? And morning teas and food kind of social time has not been banned during this time, but it is a high risk activity, potentially of people sharing and touching different foods and coffee cups and things like that. So initially, in those first few Sundays when we do open up in August, we're not going to have morning tea in the way that people would have been familiar with. You're welcome to bring your own water bottle or thermos to church, and you can share in that way as well, or some pre-packaged Arnott's biscuits. But we won't be supplying anything as a church, at least in those first few Sundays, just to get used to this new kind of world and system that we're in. But that's not a not ever either. So we do hope that, as we get used to the new world, that we'll be able to share in some kind of morning tea and fellowship after a service. And of course, social distancing still applies. So it's really hard to have a good morning tea fellowship from,
That's
a
right,
metre and a
yeah.
half away. Mind you, it's going to be better than on Zoom, I imagine. But we'll play it by ear and do what we can.
Great. And that actually answers someone else's question about what morning tea will look like moving forward into 2021. So that's helpful as well. You mentioned that it would be good if you would like to bring your own water bottle, for example.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. What about we're used to in the church using the Bibles that are in the church.
Oh, yes.
What will that look like as we return to Sunday gatherings?
Sadly, all the Bibles have been packed away. Rose in the office has done a marvellous job of trying to make our building as COVID safe as possible. So there's no Bibles, there's no pencils, there's no texters, there's nothing in the back of the seats of the pews. Because one of the other things that we haven't talked about is after each meeting or gathering here in the building, there are some extensive cleaning protocols that need to be undertaken. And that can be quite burdensome. We've already started to do that over the last couple of weeks. And if we had to wipe down every single Bible and every single pencil after it would be a nightmare. So they've all been packed away. So for people that do come to church, for the 10 a.m. live stream or for the 6 p.m. service when it starts, we're going to encourage people to bring their own Bible, or at least download the YouVersion Bible app or another Bible app on your phone, and you can follow God's Word in that way. We'll, of course, have things up on the screen during the services as well, but there'll be no physical Bibles they are in the building, they're just packed away. So people just need to bring their own.
Okay, so bring your own water bottle, bring your own Bible. If you like me...
Your own pen or pencil.
Your own pen or pencil. If you like me, paper Bible, because I get distracted by my phone. So I'll be bringing a paper Bible with me, my own one, but we won't be able to have any of those.
Yeah, I mean, I had to bring
church.
my own one because there are no other Bibles
They're not here.
around
here.
here.
That's right. At the moment, there are no other questions that have come through on Slido, so maybe just put it out there. If you have a question, throw it in there now. We'll leave it for another few
Why
minutes.
don't we take a couple minutes?
Yeah,
break?
take a bit of a pause and
I could do with a cup of tea.
Me too.
Yeah.
Sounds
and
good.
We'll take a 5-minute pause and we'll come back.
Come back in a few minutes. Sounds great. Thank you. Cool. See you guys in a few minutes.
That was good timing, Matt.
Perfect timing. We were here the whole time.
We played that one.
Okay. A couple more questions have come in. Thank you to those people who've put the questions in. To do with the number of people again,
Okay.
but a little bit more to do with social distancing. When a couple or a family attend church together, will they be counted as one person because they don't have to socially distance, or are they still counted individually?
Great question. They are counted still individually because it's not so much to do with family units, it's to do with the number of bodies within a certain 4 metre squared area of space, the airspace that we share. So if you've got a family of 8, that doesn't count as just one attendance, that counts as 8, even if 6 of them are children. And so we do have to count every single person, even in a family. But families do get to sit together at least in church, which is quite nice, isn't it? So families don't need to be socially distant, that's true. We do have to count them as individuals, but they can sit together on the one single beautiful yellow mustard pew.
Yeah. And that goes back to the reason that you were saying before as to why the try booking will close on a Friday night.
That's
is
correct.
so that we can rearrange the building to account for families who might sit together in one seat.
Exactly.
And it allows us to rearrange the space and gives us time to do that.
Yep.
Great. Pardon me. Will there be translation of the services? So before we went into COVID, we were doing some, I believe it was Mandarin
Yeah.
translation. Will that continue moving forward? Will we restart that? What will that look like?
That's a great question, and I hadn't thought about that, and I should have. At the moment, we're still doing written translations, and thanks to our translation team who are still translating our sermons in written form and sending it out to people each week. We appreciate that. Whether we go back to a live translation as well, I'll do some thinking on that, and we'll do some thinking about that as a staff team. It's definitely possible. We've got the resources and the technology to be able to do that here in the building. And if that would be really helpful for people, then that's something that we can definitely consider doing. I'm only a little hesitant because the more ministries that we run on a Sunday morning also limits the number of people that we can invite to participate as guests in that congregation members in that way, because they counted in that limit. And but I think that's an important thing, and what the translation ministry has been a real highlight of the 10:45 service since we started. And so, yeah, if we can do it, we'll do it.
Great, thank you. There's a few more questions have come in to do with kids and youth ministry, so we might head back down that path.
Well, yeah, you can answer those.
I'd be happy to chip in here and there.
I can help.
As far as, so the first one is to do with D teams, which are our youth discipleship groups that happen on a Sunday morning during church time. So in line with kids' church that goes on, we also do youth discipleship groups. And the question is, will they go back when gatherings go back? So I'll have a quick go at answering this one.
Yeah.
At the moment, no. We do really want to get back to being able to do youth D teams. That is something, as I said before with kids, we really desire to be able to have all those things going again. At the moment, as you said, Mike, the more ministries that we start up, the more resources that are required and the more people that are required to run those ministries and that sort of thing. And so we've made the decision at the moment to not start our youth D teams on a Sunday morning. However, we do encourage anyone who would normally attend those D teams. We are putting up youth appropriate content every single week on a Friday night on the website. We're also running, as I said before, alternating weeks of face-to-face youth group on a Friday night. And we would love for the people who come to those groups to come there. So we're still doing things for our youth, but at the moment, D teams is on hold.
Just to add to that, once we open the 6 p.m. service on the 26th of July, that's a great opportunity for high school students to come. You know, if their parents are happy to come with them or drop them off, that's a great opportunity for some face-to-face discipleship with the youth and some, older people who can mentor and disciple them in that Titus 2 kind of model. So whilst we may not have a D team on a Sunday morning, there'll be Sunday night church and there'll be youth group, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, we're still on the kids and youth kind of line of questions. Will kids be able to play with toys, etc.? So particularly for our little ones, will they be able to use equipment in their programs?
Yeah, absolutely. The caveat is that any equipment that gets used needs to be cleaned afterwards. So if the parents or the kids leaders involved in the program, if they want to use toys and equipment, that's absolutely fine. We'll just encourage you to wash them all
Yes.
at the end.
Yeah.
We've already packed away a lot of toys just to minimise the
Mm.
amount of stuff that gets cleaned at the moment. There is still equipment and toys on
Mm.
the site,
Mm.
and more than happy for that to be used. It just needs to be cleaned
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
So as long as we can work out a system for that to be not so cumbersome
Mm.
on parents or on leaders, we will
Mm.
have
Yeah.
that available.
Okay, and it's probably worth noting as well that we'll probably need to be a little bit selective in what toys and equipment we use. So, for example, Play-Doh will be a no-no because you can't clean Play-Doh, but there are some things that are much easier to clean.
That's right. Hardcover books are probably okay to
Yeah.
clean, but paperback kind of books,
Yeah, a bit more difficult.
get a bit
Yeah.
messy after some detergent placed
Yes,
on them.
that's right. Okay, well, another one on kids then, thinking through, we mentioned before that because of our room limits and the space that we have, it's looking like that we'll only be able to have maybe, let's say, 15 kids come to kids' church when we're able to do some face-to-face public gatherings.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility, as there are some other churches doing that, we could do a second service after church just for kids? So like kids' church off the back of a Sunday morning service. Is that a possibility, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even thought about that idea. So thank you, whoever's asking those types of questions. This is the kind of thinking that we need to have, and that's exciting. I think. I think that's a real possibility. We need to just make sure that we have the resources able to do that in terms of safe ministry ratios. Leaders to kids. The numbers work in the building if parents want to stay as well, that we make sure that we've got all of that working out. But yeah, that could be a real possibility that we do. In fact, I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah, me
later,
too. Me
and
too.
We can maybe work towards that in early August sometime as well. I think that's the kind of thinking that we need to have.
That's right. Yeah.
At this point. And as much as we've been creative in the staff team and with parish council, having suggestions like that is
Helpful.
really, really helpful.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, one of the things that we would need to think through, obviously cleaning is a very important element of what we do to come back to church. And so between any two gatherings, we need to clean the building. So that would require us managing a cleaning process after the adult service, before the kids service, which would be something we'd need to think through.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And that would limit potentially the application of the idea.
That's right.
It may not be able to be done immediately following, say, the 10 a.m. live stream, that we run a kids service at 11:30.
Yes.
Because there wouldn't be enough time to do the clean that we need to do.
That's right.
But it could be an option that we do in the afternoon, or we have a special Sunday where it's just a kids Sunday, and have a kids celebration service.
Yep.
Yes, the cleaning is prohibitive in lots of. It's the reason we're not going back to 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. for example, is because there's not enough time
to do the clean that's necessary.
down all of the pews. And I don't know if you're familiar with the cleaning protocols that we need to do. After every gathering on the site, we need to wash down every seat, every table, every surface area that's been touched, door handles, the bathrooms, the kitchen, the foyer. That's not something that can be just done in 15 minutes. And in winter, things need to dry. So, but I really like the idea of a kids Sunday. I think we can work it. We just have to think about how to do it.
Spend some time thinking it through. Absolutely. And just on that as well, as I mentioned before, we are going back to Friday afternoon kids club programs. So there are going to be face-to-face programs run for the kids of Minchinbury Anglican every second week at the moment, which is really exciting. It's not Sunday kids church, but it is something for our kids, which is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, one of the limitations we have is that we don't have multiple large buildings. Some churches will have the main church building, and then they'll have a large church hall or another hall. And maybe we could do a fundraising campaign to get a new Minchinbury Anglican Church hall. If we did have a church hall, we could have a 10 a.m. live stream for adults and some families here. And then we could run a special kids service for another 50 kids in the church. But sadly, we don't have that space. So if you've got a cool $1 million lying around, the building fund details are on our church website.
Yes.
And we could get that going.
Yeah, and so it's worth remembering that as we look around at what other churches are doing, there's great things that we can see other churches doing and great ideas that we can think about how to implement. But each church has unique things that they need to overcome. For us, our buildings are going to be something that we need to think through that are unique to our property that we need to think through. So it's worth keeping that in the back of our minds. A question about, do kids need to socially distance from other kids? Just briefly, the answer is no, but the application of that, as we've mentioned a lot of times, our highest priority is caring for and loving the people in our programs in our community. And so whilst we don't have to strictly social distance children from each other, leaders and adults still need to social distance from children and from each other in that space. And we also still need to practice responsible behavior. So just because kids can technically not social distance, that doesn't mean that we then immediately, allow our kids to, you can fill out the rest. But we're still trying to be responsible in the way that we enact that.
Ness just told me to smile more. I look really grumpy and angry, so apologies. Here's my
Fantastic. So what about the playground? We have a fantastic playground on our church property.
With
Is the playground?
Sale?
Yes, it's fantastic. Is that playground in use?
Yes. So it is open to the public. It's a public playground. And like all public playgrounds in New South Wales, they're open for use by the community as long as there's no gatherings of 20 people or more in the playground. It's fine. We don't have 20 people playing in the playground at one time.
Yeah.
Especially we don't have any on-site kids programs at the moment. But I peer over the back fence and there are people often there.
Often people there.
Sliding down the slide, people playing basketball outside. So it is being used. I don't know if the question's leading towards cleaning protocols.
It was, yes.
My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will, is that the same cleaning that needs to happen inside a building doesn't necessarily need to happen outside. So we're not washing down the slippery dip and things like that at the moment. I think because it's outside, I'm not an epidemiologist expert, but the risk is lower than inside. So that's my understanding. But we can check all that up. In fact, I should get a church warden to do that. Julius, you could do that for me. Feel free to do that and let us know if we're doing anything wrong there.
Great, thank you. I assume there's probably going to be a few questions like this. Again, it's about a kids service. The question this time is, would it be possible to do a kids service on a Saturday? I think probably you'll say this as well, Mike. As you've said a few times, lots of things are possible.
Yeah.
They just need to be thought through, whether it will work on our property. The other thing that we need to think through is, and we've said this a few times already, is that we need leaders for kids programs, and we need to be careful about how much we are asking our leaders to do. And so while there is a possibility that we could do a Saturday event here or there, a regular Saturday kids service is probably sort of pushing a little bit on our volunteer leadership team to run that.
Potentially, unless there's a lot of parents that
are
so keen for their kids to share in fellowship in that way, then of course it's potentially possible.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure everyone's done safe ministry training.
Absolutely, yep.
And all of those specific things. But a Saturday thing could work because you're not necessarily tied to the same cleaning schedule of having one gathering and then another gathering immediately after. Lots of things are possible. So we can work at potentially doing that.
For sure. And if I might just add this in, if you have questions or suggestions or thoughts that you would like to voice with someone, please feel free to email me about those things, and I'm happy to talk about those things with the staff team. But that's really helpful, and I really appreciate that. So please do that. And if you'd like to get involved in helping out in leadership in some way in kids or youth ministries as we move forward, please get in contact with me as well.
It's a private live stream, isn't it? So your phone number is 04.
If you knew my phone number off by heart, that would be strange.
Matt@minchinbury.church. You'll get it.
Matt@minchinbury.church is my email address, and you'll find that on the website as well if you're looking for that. So again, I think that's all we have on Slido. Can I get maybe our tech guys to confirm if there are any further questions on the Facebook or anything that haven't come through yet? No, that's it.
We're all good.
I think that's it,
Well,
Mike.
why don't we call it there
Mm.
for today? Who knows? We might do another live Q&A once we relaunch
Yeah.
on July the 26th and August the 2nd. I'm sure people might have more questions once we actually open the doors,
Yeah.
how that's been
Yes.
and things like that. So we want to keep the communication lines open between the staff team, the parish council, the overall leadership team, and our congregation. But we do, please keep praying and please keep being patient. We're doing our best trying to navigate these waters. And so thank you, everybody, for that. And thanks for everybody for your questions.
Yeah.
They've been really great questions. Lots of good ideas that we can wrestle with. And we just want Jesus to be honoured. Our church mission and vision hasn't changed even during COVID. We want to make disciples who love Jesus and show Jesus love. And however we can keep doing that, we're going to keep doing that.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Great. See you later.
See ya.